Welcome to Bold Talk Series, where creativity, leadership, ideas, innovation come together. My name is Epi Ludvik, and today I have a privilege to have a short one-on-one conversation with Jeff Fryer, Fractional CMO at Semiconductors and AI Hardware, and founder of a Fryer Group. Jeff, great seeing you. Welcome to our Bold Talk Series. How are you?
Thanks, Epi. I'm really glad to be here. I love talking with people, so I'm glad to have a conversation with you.
Great. Well, Jeff, you come with an extensive background in marketing. Let's start first with what first pulled you into deep tech world, especially the semiconductors and artificial intelligence space. And was there a moment you knew this was your arena?
Thanks for the question, Epi. I actually had an interesting journey to get used to work in the music business for a decade. It's actually where I met my wife in New York. But I realized the things that were sort of lighting up the board were technology companies at that time, leading in from Microsoft and Google and these sort of companies that I was working with when I was working at the Interactive Advertising Bureau. And the more I started working with them, the more I started to light up with knowing what their business was, knowing what makes them different. And that led me to Arm and then moving to Austin, Texas. And I ran their global social media strategy for a number of years. And in a similar way, the more I started to get to know not only the business that they do, but later at an agency that I work with based in Phoenix, working with a lot of their semiconductor and deep tech clients, the more that I started working with those companies, the more I really saw an opportunity. And that opportunity was helping CEOs of mid-sized companies that are really doing things in a different way. There's a lot of room for the big sort of companies, but I gravitated to those that were doing something different, those that were looking beyond just the innovation banners. So companies that were within semiconductor and AI hardwares were really pushing the template of what was happening. Long before ChatGPT was in the lexicon, I was already looking at companies that were building the data centers behind there, trying to figure out how to push, the buttons of what the technology was. That's super exciting. And so those are the type of companies that I've been working with the last couple of years.
Yeah. So you probably must work with lots of engineer-led companies. Tell us about, or what does it take to build trust inside engineer-led company where marketing may have been undervalued or even sometimes distrusted. I've done some work with some engineers and I understand that very well, but love to hear from your side.
Yeah, engineering-led companies are highly skeptical by nature. It's part of what they do to be successful. And so that transfers a lot of times to other companies. I actually enjoy that practice. The nature of being successful means you have to look at something in a curious fashion. So I'm used to dealing with CEOs and founders where marketing can be a curse word of sorts unless you do product marketing. You're talking about the features and the specs and the speed and feeds. So that's something that I actually really enjoy. The practice of trying to get to the nature of why a company is different or to tell their story, to translate that in many ways is something that I don't know if enough people really enjoy going into that fire, but I do. And so one of the ways that I look at it when I'm talking with a CEO, let's say that they went and they're engineering and R&D heavy, and they're now at, let's say, a Series B. The thing that I always love to see is when they get that aha moment of a conversation that I've been having, with them for a while, and they finally get it. And in the meantime, trying to look for, business vision is something that's really exciting. So yeah, it's hard. It's very hard, but ultimately trying to get them to where they can be is something that's really exciting. So the marketer part of me loves the challenge, and I love seeing them when they finally.
Yeah. Well, I often see there's many reasons why growth stalls, but in many cases is not because of tech, but somehow the story isn't landing properly, right? How do you rebuild that narrative without losing, let's say, the founder's original vision?
Yeah, I'm a big believer, especially in seeing a lot of the companies that I work with that, the tech works, the plan doesn't. And it's really hard to go in there with a CEO who quite often is wearing a million hats. And you don't want to go in there and say, hey, no one's believing your story. No one really cares what you have to say. And you're not going to get to that next level. That's not really the right path to take. At the same time, you have to be a barometer of, three chords in the truth, so to speak. One of the things that I, look at in that conversation really is early on in, what's their frustration. A lot of people come in as a fixer. They're going to tell the CEO what's wrong and how to be the Superman and fix it. That's not really the approach that I take. I've always been a problem solver. I think the approach to take is talking with them about where they're frustrated, what keeps them up at night, or what gets them out in the morning. Because those are a lot of times how the CEO thinks. They're not thinking as a marketer might think, but they are thinking in, and how do I get to that next level? Or, I just had a meeting with an investor and they really don't know what I do. How can I, bust through that cycle? So it's really trying to get in their head a little bit and trying to understand where are they frustrated and where are they happy. And from that, everything else is a conversation. I've just learned that even though I have a playbook that has worked really well in terms of first conversations and success metrics, it's all in the conversation with the CEO and trying to understand, like, how do you get out of bed? What are you first thinking about that you can't sleep about? And then really taking it from there.
Yeah. Yeah, very good point. Now, Jeff, you're doing somewhat like as a part of a fractional CMO, the work that you're doing. There's a lot of hype around AI, and the chips also, but it's more on the AI side of things. How do you stay grounded and help your clients cut through noise while still riding the wave on this innovation side of AI and chips and so on?
Yeah, thanks, Epi. I actually think about this question a lot. So, I mean, one of the things is I test out a lot. I test out, I experiment. I'm not going to bring anything to a client that I don't really believe. If it doesn't have value for them, I'm not going to bring it to them. And there's a lot of stuff out there that's also very SaaS driven. If you look at anything that's B2B tech, you'll see a lot of stuff about, GTM this and AI this, and it's hard to cut through the noise. But I've always been a big believer that it's not just bringing someone an AI tool for the sake of doing an AI tool. Really, the reason that they would hire me is to be AI's boss. That's something that the experience of leadership will have. So I think through the AI cycle a lot, but it's really, again, it goes back to the same conversation. Where do you need to take the business? And is there something that we can optimize for that? I'm not a fan of automation for the sake of automation, but is there something in which we can improve the process of what you do? Can we get, you're having customer meetings. This happened to me the other day. I had a client who had customer meetings, and the data points that they were having were stuck in those meetings. And yet we are having sidebars on, okay, well, what are you hearing? Where are you winning deals? Where are you losing deals? That's something that AI can help with. It doesn't have to be just only let's write, blog posts better or that sort of thing. It really is, how can we improve your business? How can we optimize what we're doing? So a lot of times I'm really thinking through, okay, what are we trying to achieve? And from that, is there something that we can do to help optimize, what we're doing better? So I spend a lot of time experimenting, trying out new things. I'm always learning from LinkedIn as well. So I think more about solutions and less prompts in that, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well said. Obviously, the optimization is something that requires a very focused, detailed, playing both the long game and short game. But there's a lot that goes into. But in the end, it's all about truly a leadership. I saw in one of the posts, I guess you mentioned about the mid-sized companies don't need bloated teams, just the right leadership. What does a right-sized leadership look like in action?
Yeah, I think, one of the things when I talked about right size leadership is there's a feast and famine sometimes. There are companies who operate from a enterprise standpoint. I've worked with enterprise companies, and they sometimes struggle with replicating that when you work at the mid-size level that a lot of my clients are doing. They're used to big budgets, they're used to brand names, they're used to logos, they're used to people taking their calls simply because of the name. And when you get to that sort of middle ground, you have to really scrap in a different way. It's different than when you're a startup, and it's different than where you're an enterprise. So right size leadership means thinking through the plan that makes sense for them. So you're not going to just rely upon a brand halo. You might only have maybe one or two marketing people. You're often going to be resource constrained. You're going to have to rethink to the budgets. You're going to have, instead of a list of 5 tools, you maybe have one that has to satisfy a whole bunch of different things. Alongside that, on the leadership aspect, it's a little less about managing departments, managing people, and these sort of things that corporations would go through. And it's much more about collaboration. So right size leadership happens to be a term that I think fits for companies that are looking for someone that doesn't just go in there and try and boss people around and tell them, oh, these are the 3 things you're going to do, or you're going to get put on a pip or something like you would in a corporation, but really looks to be understanding in where are you, what resources do you have, who's going to execute this vision, do I have to help execute with you? And so it's really thinking, how can I be a partner for ultimately what you're trying to do? That's what I mean by right size leadership. It's things that fit where they are, because a $12 million company is much different than a $75 million company. It's much different than a company who is going to do an IPO. I might be the right partner for them at, let's say, $30 million ARR. And I might not be the right partner for them if they're going to IPO tomorrow. So really is trying to figure out, like, okay, where am I the best fit for you? There are a lot of companies who reach out and say, okay, I just got seed money and I might, want some PR and marketing. I might not be the right fit for them. So it's really trying to go, how can I be a best help to you for where you are right now, and not for where you might be in 3 years from now. My goal is to get them to grow and to scale. So that's what I mean by right size leadership at the right time and right space.
Well said. Jeff, what does the word bold mean to you?
Good question. I think bold means doing something different and unexpected. My wife always made a joke that if I was trying to walk in the snow and there was a definitive path with footsteps and it was easy to make it on the pathway and you can clearly see that people saw that as the best path, or one that looked a little rougher that people had to go on, 11 times out of 10, that's the one that I would choose. And I think being bold means looking at things from a different lens, a different standpoint. The same person that, if you're an intern, let's say, and you get assigned something to, I don't know, photocopy at a printer, and you're looking at it in a different way. You're trying to understand what makes things tick, that curiosity mindset, and you want to approach things differently, that will pay off for you down the road. So I think being bold is going and looking at things in a different way and being okay with it, looking for a different approach, not necessarily knowing all the answers, but going, I'm going to try this anyway. Some people really want to look for a comfortable space, and that's cool. I've never really been one of them. I think being bold means it's okay to say things that 20% may not agree with, and that's okay if that's, the intention. So I think being bold means seeing sometimes some things that people, don't want to say, or they're not sure what to say, and it's okay sometimes to be that person.
And with that, a great way to end this podcast. Jeff, great seeing you. Thank you for joining us in this Bold Talk series, and looking forward to seeing you again soon. Until that, be great and be bold always. Take care.
Thank you, Epi.
Thank you.